Hi, it's Craig Firhill here to tell you all about a very exciting opportunity, and it comes courtesy of this. So what I have in my hands here is a Euro 2024 special that was created by Nutmeg Magazine and the Herald newspaper, and they are giving one lucky Terrace podcast listener the chance to win 2 tickets for Scotland's opening game against Germany at Euro 2024. In order to do this, you just buy yourselves a copy of this using the code Terrace24 at www.heraldscotland.com/Euros. That's Terrace24. Terrace is all written out in letters and it's all caps, and then 24 at the end of it. And that is at www.heraldscotland.com/Euros, where this will set you back at the discount price as well of £10. So this for £10 and the possibility of seeing the opening game at the Euros in Germany, in Munich. God, I wish I could enter this myself, but unfortunately I can, because if I won, that would look very dodgy. And before I go, I should probably say as well that I have read this from cover to cover, and there's some truly excellent bits of work in it. Among my favourites would be the sprawling interview that Danny Garavelli had with Steve Clarke. She sat down with the Scotland manager, but also talked to other people who know Clarke very well to get a very interesting picture of the man. I also enjoyed Rob Robertson's retelling of Euro 92, where Scotland went to their first ever European Championships in Sweden. And I was also very much touched by Graham McGarry's story of Scott Ramsey, the young Scottish fan who tragically passed away and ultimately inspired the players ahead of Euro 96. So, one more time, Terrace24 at heraldscotland.com/Euros. Terms and conditions may apply. See the website for details.
Hello and welcome to the Terrace Scottish Football Podcast. My name is Craig Telfer, and on this occasion I am joined by my close associate Shaughan McGuigan.
Hello there.
And you know what happens when the Claudio Caniggia and Benjamin Massing of the Terrace get together. That is right, you are going to get tackled thigh-high by some lower league Scottish football, and it's so powerful that one of us is going to lose a boot.
Good, I recognise that. I recognise that one. Very good.
I watched that video clip back when I was pulling this introduction together, and never before have I seen someone ride 2 really bad tackles. But you know the expression "third time's a charm." Benjamin Massing was determined to make sure that Claudio Caniggia could not finish his run.
The funny thing is although I vaguely remember the 1986 World Cup, the 1990 World Cup was the first one where I was like really excited about it. Coming up and watched every game and understood it and what have you. And bear in mind, like there was a whole build up to the first game, and that Cameroon-Argentina game, I was like, my goodness, this is just the greatest tournament ever devised. They are just kicking lumps at each other, and Cameroon's beating Argentina. It was class.
The tournament itself wasn't fantastic, though, was it? Am I right in saying it's got a fairly nostalgic tint to it that sort of smoothed out the rough edges, and people remember it as better than it actually was?
I can't remember. I'm sure I once tweeted that it was one of the dullest World Cups of all time. It may have been Johnny McFarlane,
right?
Who replied to me to say, "Can't believe you would think that." Like Nessun Dorma, so on and so forth. I was 12, not huge into opera, as you can imagine. It was just a dull World Cup, a really dull World Cup.
I suppose isn't a lot of things like that tainted by the age that you watched them at. So for me, for instance, it's the 1994 World Cup. It's the first one I can really remember, and I thought that was an excellent World Cup, and that's my favourite World Cup. But I'm not sure if it's because it was a stellar World Cup or it's just the first one that I can remember. I can remember the big moments from it.
No, 94 was good. 94 was good. Not a great final, but a good tournament. I'm sure up until very recently, the 1990 World Cup had the lowest goals per game. Like it was just dull. It was dominated by defences. It wasn't good.
The best World Cup, and maybe recency bias, but I thought the 2022 World Cup was excellent in Qatar. Obviously, you put the human rights abuses to one side, as you've got to do with a lot of these things, but I thought that was a really good World Cup and an excellent final. But the worst one, Shaughan, I thought South Africa 2010 was rubbish.
A dreadful backdrop of vuvuzelas. Oh. That's not a great start.
You ever heard of vuvuzela in real life?
No, but you have, haven't you?
Yes, I'm sure every time we talk about the 2010 World Cup, I'm obligated to tell you about going to an East Stirlingshire match at Oakville where a young boy had a vuvuzela, and oh my goodness, it is so loud. And that was one singular vuvuzela. I'd hate to think what it's like to be inside a stadium full of vuvuzelas.
So obviously he was young. the Vuvuzela looked quite large. Like, was it difficult for a youngster to play?
He's a teenager. I'm saying, like, he's about 13, so the thing's probably the size of a toddler. Like, if you were to put it down on the side, the thing's probably the size of a toddler.
Right, okay.
The only good thing, Shaughan, I remember that came out of that World Cup was the apparent beef between Mark Lawrenson and Gerald Sinstadt at one of the games.
Oh, so was this where Mark Lawrenson thought he'd said something funny and then said you could laugh?
Yes.
And then he I can't remember his exact words, but you could tell they really dislike each other.
Yes. Unlike you and I, Shaughan, you and I get on very well, both professionally and personally. And so much so that we are going to record a podcast reviewing the 3 playoff matches from Tuesday and Wednesday. We will be looking at the first legs from the Premiership playoff semi-final and the first legs from the Championship and League One playoff finals. All games finished 2-1 and all played out in a very similar pattern where one team was dominant, took a 2-goal lead, and then had to show their resolve a wee bit in a nervy finish. Before we get going, Shaughan, everyone okay with yourself? You must be delighted with the outcome of that Premiership playoff semi-final first leg.
Everything is very well. I'm a wee bit choked with the cold, but other than that, and in terms of my thoughts about Tuesday, yes, I am tentatively encouraged.
Excellent. Well, Shaughan, if you're good, I'm good, and that's exactly where we are going to start. We're going to look at the game in the northwest of Glasgow where Partick Thistle took on Raith Rovers at Firhill. And Shaughan, as you mentioned there, your boys have got the advantage going into the second leg tomorrow night. 2 excellent goals from Scott Brown and Lewis Ferguson put the Rovers ahead. Lewis Ferguson? He plays for Bologna. Lewis Vaughan put the Rovers ahead. And one of the most ingenious assists of the season from Scott Robinson set up Blair Olsen to pull one back. This tie, like the other two, I'm going to use this expression, Shaughan, and I think this expression will have been used many, many times over the past week. It's finely poised.
It really is. Firstly, in terms of, because like Raith Rovers, the majority of their playoff experiences has been the playoffs to get the Championship. And even the last time they were in the playoffs to get to the Premiership. And they reached this stage last time, semi-finals against Dundee. They fell in the quarterfinals, played Dundee in the semis, but it was 3 years ago, so it was during COVID. So just in terms of arriving at Firhill, Raith took a good away support. I thought the atmosphere was good. And as much as Raith fans were decent, I thought they I don't know how it came across on TV, in terms of being there, I thought they generated a good atmosphere. But the bulk of the credit for how good the atmosphere was on Tuesday goes to the Partick Thistle fans.
Yeah.
Like there's clubs who, and Raith are one, who they are trying to encourage a singing section. You go to Premiership clubs like Kilmarnock or St Johnstone, they have a singing section, and they all do great. Motherwell, I suppose, are maybe the best example of a more provincial side that have a really good a group that create a great atmosphere. I don't know if I've seen a provincial side, if you can have a team for Glasgow that's provincial, I think you can, who have a singing stand rather than a singing section. That entire stand behind the goals, the kind of colour, the sound, and even just like the movement.
Yeah.
Like they were rocking and jumping down for the whole game. Another like maybe I don't know, a 20-minute spell in the first half where Raith managed to get those 2 goals. I thought they were excellent. So fair play to them. In terms of the game, I think when I arrived, and as much as I knew that Partick Thistle's squad depth was, I think, a wee bit weaker than Raith's, certainly in terms of who they can call off the bench. My opinion in terms of how the game would have panned out was if it was close, or even if Raith had started well, maybe the last half hour Raith might get stronger because they could call on like Jack Hamilton or Dylan Easton or Mullen off the bench. Whereas Partick Thistle didn't really have those options. But actually how it turned out was, the longer the game went, it was actually Partick Thistle who looked the likelier side. And I think a lot of that came down to their substitutions, and not only that, but also Raith's substitutions as well.
Okay, we'll talk about those substitutions, Shaughan, because one of the things I down my notes, perhaps one of the most notable substitutions, was Keith Watson going off and young Dylan Corr coming on. Did that have an impact then on how the match played out? So,
funnily enough, I don't think it necessarily did in terms of the first leg. I think it potentially will in the second leg.
Okay,
it was quite interesting actually, because see when See when Vaughan made it 2-0. So that was I think it was like 5 minutes ago till half time. It was like 40th minute, I think, that Vaughan scored. I happened to, I don't know why, but I happened to look to the bench, and Keith Watson had run over to Ian Murray, and they were taught about something. And at that point, you think Ian Murray is passing on messages about, right, here's how we defend the next 5 minutes. Like, don't play out for the back. Let's just launch it long or whatever. But based on whatever they had a conversation about, Dylan Corr then ran out the dugout, and Corr had a really rigorous kind of warm up behind the goals. And I was like, that would suggest to me that either there's maybe been some doubt about Watson and his condition, and maybe Murray thinks he needs to come off at half time, maybe to protect them for the second leg, or maybe Watson's had a conversation with him to say, listen, I don't think I'm going to make it much longer. However, during the interval, Corr then stayed out with the substitutes and just warmed up normally. I was like, right, okay, so I've obviously misread that. But then ultimately Watson went down. So I don't know, maybe I was reading too much into it. I thought Corr done okay when he came on, but I do think that Murray Ewan Murray is a far better centre-half when Keith Watson's next to him. I don't know if he necessarily enjoys being a centre-half and a mentor. So I do think that, and bear in mind as well that Corr dislocated his shoulder against Arbroath.
That's it. He looked like he was wearing a bra almost to sort of underneath his top.
So it'll be interesting to see if Corr's fit enough. I do think that Murray starts him in that second leg because of how much better Raith are with Scott Brown in the middle of the park. But a lot may come down to how fit Corr is.
I beg your pardon, because actually when you were speaking there, I looked up the Partick Thistle Raith Rovers match, the teams on Soccer Base, and I didn't realise it was so late into the second half where Watson had gone off. I thought it was actually midway through towards the end of the first half, so I completely got that one wrong there. I suppose for the second leg, if you're Brian Graham, who got better as the game went on, he set up a really good chance. I think it was for Alston right at the very end, and that just through strength and just experience, able to back off into the defender and pop it off for Alston. Really good save from Dabrowski. Dabrowski actually made a couple of really important saves in that second half there. But if you were Brian Graham going into that match, you would look at Dylan Corr, look at his spindly shoulders and think, I'm fucking having you for this game. So you don't want to be in a position where I hate that from, not saying I'm going to hate that from managers, but I hate that when you're in the position where if you've got one player injured, you have to reconfigure the rest of the team around them. You wouldn't want to be in a position where, because Keith Watson's injured, then suddenly Scott Brown has to drop into centre-back and other people have to move out to accommodate him. Because Scott Brown, certainly for about the first hour or so, Scott Brown was excellent in this match, and his goal, both goals were very well taken, but the technique that he showed to connect with that, the run that he made into the box as well, just superlative.
Yeah, and it's interesting because Scott Brown is... I think he is nominally you would say he was probably a defensive midfielder, or this season a centre-half. I think when you look at a lineup and say, right, so Shaughan Byrne and Scott Brown are protecting that back four, but he's so much more than that.
Yeah.
Like, Byrne is happy to sit there. He doesn't want to get forward, but Brown will be everywhere. And I actually thought it was excellent on Tuesday night. And you're right, the technique for that finish, the way he kind of kept it down, the way it drilled it past Mitchell, absolutely superb. And I thought in general Scott Brown had an excellent game.
And what about let's keep the theme of excellent goals going. Lewis Vaughan's goal, absolutely superb finish. However, Lewis Nielsen doesn't really cover himself in glory, because when that ball comes in, I think that the run, I think it's Stanton, that's it. I did down in the notes there. I just watched the highlights before we came on. Stanton's run across the face of Aaron Muirhead, that's enough to put him off. I think it's a dummy run that allows the ball to go through. But then Nielsen goes with him, but he completely forgets Vaughan over his shoulder. And it's a great finish by Vaughan to hit the thing first time. I mean, David Mitchell's got absolutely no chance. But if Nielsen stays with him, that opportunity isn't there.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. I wasn't impressed by Nielsen in general. I think Nielsen started off life quite well at Partick Thistle. I think the longer the season has went on, the less is impressed. Interestingly enough as well, in terms of how that goal comes about, like Ross Matthews started at right back for Raith. was quite interesting. Bear in mind they brought in James Brown on loan, who has started the majority of the games at right back.
You're not a fan of James Brown's, are you?
No. I think maybe if Brown is the right back in a team where your left back wants to get forward, then that's absolutely fine, because Brown does not want to cross a halfway line. I don't think he's the greatest defender in the world, but he's okay. But he absolutely does not want to cross that halfway line. But Liam Dick isn't comfortable doing it either. So Matthews, I thought defensively was okay. Bearing in mind he was up against Fitzpatrick for a good bit, but he does want to get forward. And I thought his delivery into the area was really good. You're right, defensively not great. They're both kind of attracted by Stanton. See as Vaughan shaped to shoot. I was like, you've got a wee bit of time here. I don't know if you have to take it his first time, but of course Vaughan is such a good player and he has such belief in his technical ability. Then fair play. When you can finish it like that, then absolutely bash on. Another great finish.
There was a strange bit in the commentary. I think I said on the show that we recorded last time that I was going to go to Dumbarton versus the Spartans, but we got caught up in stuff in Glasgow and just didn't have the time to go and watch it. So instead I watched this match on the television. There was a strange bit in the commentary where they mentioned about Lewis Vaughan moving into the Premiership. I can't remember who the co-commentator was. It might be Michael Stewart, but said that like Premiership clubs would be taking a look at him. And I thought, I don't know about that. I think that Lewis Vaughan will be playing. If Lewis Vaughan is playing Premiership football next season, it will be with Raith Rovers. I can't imagine any other side going in for him.
I think so as well. So being like touchwood, like obviously we've had so many conversations about Lewis Vaughan down the years. The only time I can imagine a Premiership club looking to potentially take on Vaughan is A, if he was out of contract, which isn't the case. I think he signed a 3-year deal with the Rovers, and B, if he had at least 2 years in a row where he's consistently injury-free and scoring goals. So see if his contract ran out next summer and he maybe had like another 20 goals in the Championship or whatever, you would imagine, I don't know, Ross County or St Johnstone or somebody of that ilk maybe taking a chance on him. But no, I can see him being at Raith until he retires potentially, or needs to move down the way, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I get you there. I thought that was. I think it's probably things that you say you don't actually take into consideration the player's injury record, and that's his injury record isn't a slight on him as a player. I think with the general consensus on Lewis Vaughan is that he's a fabulous player who, had it not been for his injuries and his terrible run of luck with those cruciate ligament injuries that he experienced, that he had the quality, as you say, to go on and play for a team like a Ross County or a St Johnstone or someone like that. But yeah, I do think he'll be at Raith Rovers for most of his days. One of the other things I observed, Shaughan, as well, particularly in the first half, Partick Thistle seemed to give the ball away a lot in key areas. There were a number of times where they got caught in possession around the halfway line, trying to make a pass that wasn't really on. And Raith Rovers, as you say, guys like Scott Brown, Shaughan Byrne, they were really capable at picking them up and moving the ball further forward. What do you think changed in the match that allowed Partick Thistle to come back into it? Because my observation was that they were on top. They were playing their way into the game, and they were the better team before they scored that consolation goal.
I think so as well. I think it was probably two things. So I think firstly, I did think at the start of the second half that Ray started it quite well. Like I think there was the chance from Lewis Vaughan, where he cut inside from the left and it just curled past the opposite post. So I did think Ray started the second half reasonably well. I thought in terms of the substitutions, I thought Stuart Bannigan coming on made a difference. I didn't think Ben Stanway or Lewis Nielsen were having particularly good games. I didn't think Ciaran McInroy was adding much.
Yeah.
I would imagine I would find him quite a frustrating player. Can do something very well, but then like give the ball away like in the next minute. So I would imagine he's quite a frustrating player. But I thought Bannigan coming on gave them a wee bit more, I don't know, steadiness. I thought Blair Olsen kind of improved things. Ultimately, they were bringing on midfielders who, like, bear in mind, you essentially have like a central defender in the middle of the park, and they were bringing on central midfielders who just seemed a wee bit more at home. And I suppose at the same time, you had the buoyancy that a goal gives them, And at the same time, Raith Rovers probably getting weaker with their substitutions.
Yeah, we'll talk about the goal because I thought this was an absolutely beautiful goal. We might as well describe it as a punt up the park. Brian Graham flicks it on to Scott Robinson, but it's Scott Robinson who's standing with his back to goal. He falls over, stumbles over his own feet and falls over, but somehow manages to header the ball. And I'm not sure if it was deliberate or I'm not sure if the ball just perfectly caught his head, but he plays it in. He completely catches the centre-back off on his toes, plays the ball into Blair Alston. And Blair Alston, I think this is a brilliant finish. He completely sclaffs it. But I think, if he'd hit that properly, I think Dubrovsky would have saved it. It's the fact that he doesn't get it properly and it allows it to creep into the corner. I thought this was a brilliant goal. And I'd like to think that it was meant, but I'm not sure if it was. I'm not sure if it was from Robinson. I'm not sure if it was meant from Alston.
So I'd already started laughing at the fact that Robinson had fallen. So I was like, oh, brilliant, he's fallen over, great stuff. And then when it ended up in the kind of path of Blair Olsen, I was like, right, well, that's very frustrating because like clearly he hasn't meant that. And you're right, the way he scuffed it, I think Dubrovsky was taken by surprise by the layoff, I suppose. Everybody was, and the scuffed finish, I suppose. The more I watch it back, the more I think that Scott Robinson meant it. There's a debate about it. I've spoken to him and like, no chance he meant it. I think there was. I've watched it maybe 2 or 3 times back. There does seem to be a glance.
Yeah.
If he knows where the ball is, which again is like quite difficult to ascertain, but no, I genuinely think he meant it.
Yeah, I thought it was such a well constructed goal all round, and I would like to think, yeah, you know what, I don't care. I'm going for it. Completely meant. The layoff was absolutely perfect. The finish was absolutely great, and it was just a great goal. But Shaughan, I'm going to use this word again. Finally poised. We've got the second leg is happening Friday night at Starks Park. You will be there in attendance, of course. I'll be watching on the television. What can we expect from this one?
I think it'll be another very, very good game. I do wonder if Partick Thistle can keep kind of going to the well, I suppose, like they had to come back against Airdrie. They've managed to come back in this one. I think if Raith managed to take a lead, that gives them an awful lot to do. However, I do think that if you can give Brian Graham the service and suddenly he is up against a centre-half pairing that I think is weaker than what started Tuesday night's game, I do think that Partick Thistle have a chance. The record in Kirkcaldy is very poor. You have to go back to 2011, and it is quite a lot of games. Like as long as if they haven't played each other, that is a number of games. So the record in Kirkcaldy is poor, and I think I'd be surprised if Partick Thistle's midfield was as poor. I would imagine they'll be changing. I imagine Chris Doolan will make changes. So I do think the midfield will be better because I think for certainly the first hour, I thought Raith were excellent, but it was the fact that Partick Thistle in the middle of the park really struggled to contend with them. The fact they have an advantage, I will stick my neck on the line and say that Raith will get through, but I think it'll either be very, very tight or will involve potentially a ridiculous number of goals.
You're just touching on something you said there about Partick Thistle's midfield and something about Kerr McInroy. I think when I saw him join Partick Thistle, I was really excited and thinking, it didn't necessarily work out for him at Kilmarnock, but he's got this chance to drop down a level, show everyone what he's capable of and kick back on and maybe get a game in the Premiership at some point next season. But having watched him, I've been so excited about him when he was at Airdrieonians and at Ayr United. Just doesn't feel like we're getting the same player there. I think Craig Anderson pointed out on Twitter, when he moved to Partick Thistle, a lot of people were like, what are we doing loaning him out? But as usual, Craig Anderson was right in hindsight. Where do you think, you'll have seen him a bit more than me this season, Shaughan, where do you think it's not gone quite right for McInroy?
In fairness, I don't think he is necessarily suited to the wide role, which is where he played on, he was played on Tuesday night. But I also don't think he necessarily has the pace to play centrally. So it might be a case of what does suit him best. So I don't think I think we've discussed him previously in terms of the fact that he is a box-to-box player. But by that token, I don't think he's necessarily that capable defensively. So it might be just finding that best position for him. Maybe it's behind the striker, for example. But that's easier said than done when you need him to play a variety of positions and maybe some of them just don't suit him.
I almost thought you were talking about Ross Forbes for a second there. you have to find a very, very specific area, quadrangle on the pitch that you can play this guy. Otherwise, don't bother at all. But what you call him then, Shaughan? Who's going into the final?
I think I'll go for Raith Rovers to win 3-2 on Friday night, and what's that? 5-3 on aggregate.
Hell yeah, that's what I want to see. I want to see Raith Rovers go as far as they can, Shaughan, because I like you a lot. And if your team is successful and makes you happy, then I can bask in that. I know you won't admit it online, but you sent me a text message where you said, I was delighted to see Stennismuir win the league. You're one of my closest associates, and you put in brackets, not joking, actually. And it's great that I can share in your success. And I said, of course you can, Shaughan. It's our success. Enjoy it, embrace it. Now, let's talk about a team who aren't necessarily enjoying things, but we're talking about two. It doesn't matter. I mean, neither team's had an amazing season, actually. So we can, terrible link. Harder than you think. It'd be great if these podcasts were modular, but unfortunately, there's a telly word for you there. They are not modular, and these links have to be written, and I chose not to write the links. But nevertheless, we'll go to the Championship playoff final, first leg between Hamilton Academical and Inverness Caledonian Thistle. This took place last night, Wednesday night at New Douglas Park, and Accies got the better of the Cali Jags, and quite an entertaining clash this was. They took a 2-goal lead courtesy of Mark Ridger's bizarre own goal, and then a header from Ferguson. We'll come on to that in a second. Just happened 5 minutes into the game. Bloody hell. And a header from Ferguson's. But Cali Thistle rallied in the second half, and the substitute Ari Pebble played a massive part in that comeback, scoring with his first touch and generally looking quite lively. So, Shaughan, this match is finally poised as well. It was on BBC Alba. Did you watch it? And if so, what did you make of it?
I did watch it. Do you know what I think is quite interesting? So, this will be, is it my first time? I think it is actually, because a lot of Hamilton's games have taken place at 5:30, live on TV, and I don't think I've managed to catch any of them. So you know how we will watch highlights and you'll read comments on Pie and Bovril, but you really have to watch I think you have to watch a team for 90 minutes to establish kind of just how they operate, I suppose. And I think, bear in mind that the comments that you've read on Pie and Bovril, and then to see them come into play over a 90-minute game. You know the DiCaprio meme when he's pointing at the television?
Yes.
See when you see things like, John Rankin's not very good at managing a game. That was how I was thinking watching this game. Yeah, I mean, I thought Hamilton started very, very well, but I think Duncan Ferguson probably reacted reasonably well in terms of, I mean, I do think he brought in players who probably should have started. I find them. I think how he sets a team up is odd. I think who he plays and who he doesn't play is unusual. He did react to the fact that they'd went 2-0 down, but I don't know if John Rankin necessarily reacted particularly well. Bear in mind, there was obviously a point where he thought, right, this game is starting to drift away from us. Can we bring it back? Can we kickstart the momentum back towards Mark Ridgers? And you bring on, if it was me and you're bringing on a new striker, or bringing on a striker, you bring on Akeem Rose, somebody who has done very well since he went in on loan. And I know his 7 goals came during a pretty narrow spell across February and March. So you wouldn't necessarily say that Rose is in great form, but I still think he has a bit about him. But it brings on Andy Winter. Winter hasn't scored since the League Cup group stages. So again, it's just wee things like that. And again, similar to the first game, I suppose, Hamilton fans are happy at the fact that they've taken a lead, but I do think that Inverness fans are encouraged by, I suppose, how the second half played out. Yeah,
definitely. But I suppose, though, for Cali Thistle, the second half could only get better because it was an absolutely disastrous start to the match. I mean, this is perhaps one of the most hapless own goals I think I've seen, and it's a shame. I do feel bad for Mark Ridgers because he knew absolutely nothing about it. Kevin O'Hara picks up the ball about 50 yards from goal. He sees Mark Ridgers off his line and decides to hit it. It's not the sort of thing you would associate with Kevin O'Hara. More a Ross Forbes thing, for a wee call back to the previous point. But it's a great effort, hits the post, and just comes back and whacks off Ridgers' back. Ridgers is making a despairing effort to try and save it. Whacks off his back and goes into the net. And you think, my goodness, that's just the sort of thing when it's not your night. And Ridgers, again, this is actually the first half certainly was a bit of a personal nightmare for Mark Ridgers, because he did not deal well at all with the second goal, the corner kick into the box. I think it was Owens connected with the first ball, wasn't it?
Yes.
Owens, Ferguson had a header that hit the bar. And as the ball hit the top of the bar and sort of spinning back into play, a number of players crowd round Ridgers, but he just can't get to get the punch on it. And it's Owens is there to head it into the back of the net. So very difficult for him. And at that point, any time that Accies looked to go forward, particularly through like Lewis Smith and
Ewan Henderson, maybe? I thought Henderson had a good first half.
That's exactly what I was going to say John Henderson. John Henderson's name is Da. Sorry. Right. John Henderson's is Da. Ewan Henderson's the name of the player. He looked quite lively. He looked quite sprightly. And I really thought Cali Thistle were on the ropes. But for me, the match really seemed to change in their favour when they brought Pebble on, who was really, really good. I can't say I knew much about this guy. I'd never heard of him. I know he's got a name that sounds like a small rock. That's as much as I know about him. But I thought that scores with his first touch, really, really good finish. And then any time, certainly a period for about, after the goal, about 15 minutes, that any time he was involved, something was going to happen. He was really good at playing with his back to goal, really quite strong, good at popping off. After that period, I think the final 10, 15 minutes of the match fizzled out, and I do think the 2-1 scoreline was fair, but certainly when he came on, he really brought a lot of impetus to the side.
See before I suppose I touch on Inverness, see to go back to Ridgers' first half, see the first goal that you described as hapless. Do you think, because I thought he was at fault for the second goal, but not necessarily at fault for the first goal?
Oh no, I don't think it's his fault. That there's a degree of haplessness about it, because he didn't know anything about it. Kevin O'Hara takes a pot shot from range, catches him off guard. He tries to save it, and like it goes in. You look bad, but the ball hits the post and hits off his back and goes in. I always feel sorry for goalkeepers in that position, because
funny though.
It's deeply funny. It was deeply funny. One of those goals that you're watching the television that you go, oh, hey, and start laughing at the same time. But the second goal, not very good. And Ridgers is being one of Cali Thistle's more consistent players over the course of the season, you'd probably say.
Probably, and I don't think he's been great, but you're right, I don't think he's necessarily been culpable for where they are this season. Even the second one. So I think the second one's poor goalkeeping. No getting away from it. I do think that potentially another referee maybe gives a foul, like maybe gives a free, maybe he gets away with it on another day. But you're right. Poor goalkeeping.
That's an interesting observation about the referee. I thought he was quite good. I didn't check up who it was, because I don't really like discussing officials, despite the fact that in the next game we're pretty much going to have to be talking about the officials. But in this game, there was a period, I think it was in the first half, where Cali Thistle had a wee bit of pressure. I think they were 2 down at this point, and they were looking for a penalty. There's a couple of players had gone down under pressure in the box. The referee only a couple of yards from it and just didn't react to it at all. Just allowed the game to go on.
I thought the referee was doing very well until he didn't give Hamilton that penalty.
You'll need to remind me what happened there.
It was a shot that was drilled in from the edge of the area. It might have been O'Hara, I'm not entirely sure. It was just a clear handball. That should have been a bit, and that was at 2-0, and it was just before half time, and it was or certainly it was after 2-0, and it was interesting in terms of see when you saw the players walking off at the interval, rather than Hamilton players being discussing the fact that they're 2-0 up. You could see that they were kind of arguing amongst themselves, but they were kind of arguing with the referee, like angry at the fact that they should have had a spot kick, and understand it. But it was interesting in terms of the dynamic that I was thinking about at the time, where rather than being happy at being 2-0 up, it almost felt like they were taking a negative for the first half. I'm not saying that had any dynamic in terms of how the second half played out. I think in terms of bringing on, I think it's Samson Lowell was brought on, I thought he was excellent against Montrose, but seems to have played very, very little part since. I don't think he played the second leg and came on as a substitute in this game. And you're right, Pepple, who was... Did you see that Pepple was baptised by Alex Samuel in his back garden? Did you? I don't know if you saw that at the time. Alex Samuel appears to have a kind of adult paddling pool in his back garden, and he baptised him. It was on Instagram during the week. Now I don't know if it's like if you get married in Vegas, and it doesn't really count. But certainly Samuel baptised him, and then his first touch after his baptism, he scores. So fair play to him.
There you go. I've just gone on Alex Samuel's Wikipedia page. I've clicked on personal life. 4 words. Samuel is a Christian. So,
that still doesn't necessarily mean that they can do.
You're not ordained. You know, you're not in a position where you can baptise people. Fair play. I've been baptised. Maybe that's I can.
Hi, Alex Samuel.
Maybe that's it. Maybe that's something that I can maybe think of going on to a sideline. I think Alex Samuel's probably got the market cornered for the time being, and good luck to him. But yeah, that's class. I know that. I think religious football players. The only one, Alisson Becker, plays for Liverpool. I'm sure he baptised Robert Firmino or had him baptised in his church or whatever. So
I know. I'm trying. I can't remember who he did, but Craig Barr married somebody in New York, and I'm trying to remember who it was.
That's right. I don't think it was anyone particularly noteworthy. I think it was a friend, and he, I think he spoke about it on Danny Denham and Andy Monroe's podcast a couple of years ago. He was ordained so he could marry them. I think he was given a marriage license for the state of New York, so
That's
he
right.
was able to carry it out.
I think he wore shorts to do it though. That was a negative.
I'd pull it one side. I'd grab him by the pin and say, "Listen, mate, it's my fucking special day. Like, we're doing you a massive favour by letting you marry us here. Stop jerking us around here. Stop jerking us around."
He still looked great. They were just shorts.
He's a very, very, very handsome man, Craig Barr. Very handsome man. Shaughan, did you get a chance to watch Duncan Ferguson's post-match interview?
I haven't actually, unfortunately.
Guess what he complains about in this one?
Does he complain about the pitch by any chance?
Unbelievable. He said, he mentioned about, he was asked about the game, and he said he was pleased with the outcome because he said, like, Accies are a good side, etc., etc., and it's quite difficult on this surface. And the way he said it was like on the surface. But then he said something really weird. He talked about this was only the second time this season that the team have been 2 goals down, and the only other time was against Airdrie on plastic. But the way he said it as well was just really pointed, and it's that excuse in Scotland, in the Scottish lower leagues, isn't going to wash. I'm sorry, man, it isn't going to wash. You are. I'm trying to think. So in the Championship, you have got Raith Rovers. Do I think who else plays in plastic off the top of my head? Raith Rovers playing plastic. Airdrie. Well, there's 2 teams, right? Maybe I'm not so good at it. But then certainly the further you come down, like that, we mentioned that in last time we were speaking, every team in League One outside of Thistle and Albion all play on synthetic surfaces. And depending on what happens, you could go into division next season where every team plays on a synthetic surface, depending on how the playoffs go. But I just think that you're playing the Scottish lower leagues using the fact that pitches are plastic. That doesn't wash. And I think if you're a supporter, I mean, obviously the results speak for themselves, and the fact that Inverness, Caledon and Thistle find themselves where they are, you're not necessarily going to be enamoured with Duncan Ferguson. But the fact that in your interviews you keep on mentioning this, folk aren't going to buy it, man. Folk aren't going to buy it.
He comes across as John Hughes-esque in his post-match stuff, and that is very much not a compliment.
No, he does. He does actually. That's quite a good observation. He does, and it's a shame because I remember when he was at Everton and he left that message for the boy, and he's holding a mobile phone, and he says, "You're slipping behind in your exam or something. You pass your exams, I'll come and take you out for some tea." And you're thinking, this guy looks class. This guy's like just so much charisma. And the fact that he's a proper Everton legend, and the fact that he's taken time out to record this voice message for this wee guy at Goodison Park. No. I think.
I know what you mean, but like, see, sometimes on a Wednesday when we do the show, and I know this is maybe not a great comparison, but we will sometimes get asked to send a happy birthday message, and we will send a happy birthday message to somebody, but we are not a good fit to manage Inverness, Caledonia, Thistle by any stretch of the imagination.
The way I see it, Shaughan, is that Duncan Ferguson played for one of the biggest clubs in the country, and the fact that he has gone to taking his time out of the day to record messages for people, I think that's really nice. The fact that we're just a bunch of chancers who got a shot on the television, and sometimes people ask us to call birth messages, I don't think you can compare the two of them.
Well, no, but and you're right. It is a nice thing that he decided to do that. But that suggests to me that he should stick to a sideline like is it Cameo?
Cameo, yes.
Just recording those messages rather than asking Billy Mackay to play in midfield. That's what it suggests to me.
That's something I don't understand as well. The guy is 36. 36, isn't he? He has proven himself to be one of the best strikers in the lower leagues. He's at that age now where you can't really teach an old dog new tricks.
Mm-hmm.
You know what he's good at. He's a brilliant finisher. He's a brilliant penalty box striker. Maximise that as much as possible by getting the players in around him, get the service into him. And the fact that you're asking him to do that, it doesn't do him any favours. It doesn't necessarily do the team any favours. And it just makes you look like you're trying to be smarter than you actually are. I think
see if you have bear in mind this is a team that struggles to score goals. If you have not just a good goal scorer, arguably the best goal scorer in their history, who is coming to the end of their career, certainly the twilight part of their career, don't move them further away from goal.
No.
Don't do that. It's just strange and not working.
Chris Doolan playing Brian Graham as a holding midfielder. That wouldn't happen. That wouldn't happen, Duncan. Come on. So we've got the next leg's taking place at 5:30 on Saturday. How are you calling this one, Shaughan?
I'm going to stick with it. As much as I haven't been impressed with Inverness, I have said all season that I just think one team will come up from League One, and I somehow think that Inverness will weasel their way through somehow.
I don't know, man. I don't know. It's like the Accies, you can't quite trust them, and you're absolutely right in what you're talking about. John Rankin's poor game management, because we saw that in the last game that they played against Al Athletic, where they contrived to let them back into it and really struggled to put them away. So I just think that there's another thing that Ferguson made in his post-match interviews as well, where he said that the support we get from the away fans is generally very good. And I don't know if that's a reference to the fact that perhaps the home fans in Inverness don't tend to travel that well, and that's understandable because it's a more remote location. It's expensive to come down to the Central Belt and elsewhere. But I'm going to assume that they're the hardcore. They're the ones who watch the team every week. The folk up the road at Caledonian Stadium, they perhaps don't understand it, and they're the ones that are quite keen to get in our backs. So I think that if Accies score early doors, and let's be honest, they're capable of doing it, they've shown they're capable of doing it, then I think it could be quite toxic. They kept making the point in BBC Alba as well about the consequences of Inverness Caledonian Thistle being relegated. They kept doing, they did it quite a bit, just saying the consequences, not just from a playing perspective, but to the number of like club employees who might be out of work as well. So pretty serious stuff.
It absolutely is, and I think I do get the impression that Duncan Ferguson is maybe quite a stubborn guy, and I do wonder if he is maybe more loyal to players that he signed rather than players that weren't necessarily at the club before he arrived. But I do think that within that squad there is a starting 11 that is better. In fact, not just a starting 11, but also a system that would get the result against Hamilton. But whether he goes with it or not is a different story. But I do think they'll sneak through.
What you want to see is bring in somebody completely out of the cold and start them. I don't know Inverness Caledonian Thistle squad well enough to actually think of a player that he could bring on. Maybe bring someone from Alex Samuel's church. Maybe he could do something like that. Play him. That sounds like I'm having a dig at the religion. I'm not. I'm just trying to have
just a laugh.
Aye. Cammy Harper looks a good player though.
No, he does. You're right. There's definitely good players within that team. I still think they have a better team than Hamilton, but whether Duncan will make the most of them, I'm not sure.
You know, Pep Guardiola's ideal team would be a team full of central midfielders. Duncan Ferguson's ideal team, just 11 centre-backs. Just all kicking and heading the ball as far as possible. That's the dream.
All you do are in goals.
That's the dream. That's the dream. Sign James Carragher, sticking between the sticks. That's the dream. Just heading and kicking as far as it goes. Beautiful. That's what heaven is, isn't it? Just a green field of just big 6'3" boys just kicking and heading the ball all day long. That sounds beautiful, absolutely beautiful.
And Duncan Ferguson elbowing them.
Just that's it. Just leaving video messages for them, telling them if they stick in with their training, he'll take them out for something to eat.
And trying to sell vegan baguettes.
Oh yeah, I thought that was quite cool when he was getting into that as well. Yeah.
Again, another example that he should stick to recording messages.
Now, if Duncan Ferguson thinks that plastic surfaces are bad, why doesn't he fuck off and play at the Rock every week, and then we'll see what a bad surface is? Because Shaughan, now that is a link. That is a link. I've made up for that terrible one earlier with a good one here. Yes, our third and final match in tonight's podcast took place on Tuesday night at the Rock. Dumbarton took on the Spartans, and the Suns go into the second leg on top. Tony Wallace and Finlay Gray put Dumbarton ahead, but Ayrton Sonker scored a very good goal actually at the beginning of the second half.
Yep.
And it looks really tasty going into tomorrow night's second leg. I didn't watch this match, Shaughan, because I was watching the Thistle Raith Rovers game, but I did watch the highlights. I have seen a lot of the clips posted on Pie and Bovril, and let's just say thank goodness they were, because they were all the most interesting moments of the game outside of the goals. Watch the SPFL's highlights. This looked like a lot of fun and could have gone either way. What's your take on it?
So I managed to watch it back. I didn't manage to watch all of it, so I managed to get about 75 minutes in. Looked like two just really good League Two teams going at it. Although in terms of how the game panned out, I suppose it's very similar to the other two. I think what was noticeably different about this one, I suppose, is although Dumbarton were 2 goals up at the interval, I thought the first half was actually reasonably even. Like Spartans had chances before Dumbarton took the lead. They had chances at 1-0, and I thought Spartans were certainly the better team in the second half. So I suppose if you're a Spartans fan, you maybe take more heart from that. The other thing that I thought was quite interesting, see from where the cameras were, and we've spoken about this before, see in terms of where this match was filmed from, it gave us a tantalising glimpse of how games would look if they just built that stand at the opposite side, the river to the right, the kind of rock and the castle to the back. It was a lovely way to watch a game.
Yes, aye, and you could, one of the things as well with having the camera angle there, you could see about 5 Spartans fans turned up for the occasion. So well done, guys. Brilliant. It's a shame that so few of them turn up, because like you say, this did look like a cracking match. It's, going by what Fraser said, he said that the Spartans definitely started the match the better of the two teams, but once the game settled into its rhythm, Dumbarton were very good. Dumbarton, I've said consistently, are the best team outside Stennismuir that I've seen so far in League Two this season. I think that they've got the best strike in the division. I think they've got one of the best midfielders in the division in Finlay Gray. And I just really, really liked what I saw from them here. I thought the opening goal, again, we want to talk about bad luck. It's a massive, massive slice of luck. Gallagher Lennon, you could tell what he's trying to do. He's trying to play the ball, a big diagonal over for presumably Tony Wallace playing on the right there. But the ball gets caught in the wind, catches out Blair's Carswell, hits the bar, and then there's Wallace running into with the header for it. What I would say in that goal, there are 2 players who I think deserve a lot of praise. Gallagher Lennon, I saw make his debut, or certainly might not be his debut, it might be in one of his early games for Dumbarton when he came on loan from St Mirren. Played against Stennismuir when they lost the match 1-0 at Oakville View. And in the first half, he was up against Euro Riley, who must have beaten him probably about 3 or 4 times, like just took the drawers off and made space for himself to get crosses in. And then in the second half, he was up against Ross Taylor, who's one of the fastest, most explosive players in the division. And he found it really, really difficult. And I remember watching him thinking, this guy looks massively out of his depth here, even at League Two level. You're thinking, why is he in the books of St Mirren? Is it some sort of favour to his old man? Something nebulous like that, because you didn't see the quality there to suggest he had a future as a player. But then having seen him later on in the season, you can just see how confident he looks and how that he's adapted to what like lower league football is. And then at the stage where he's getting like man of the match performances, such as, I don't think he was man of the match here, but certainly in some of the Dumbarton's final games of the season, to thinking he's actually proven to be a really, really good signing. And then the other player, Tony Wallace, who has just been consistently a 6 or a 7 out of 10 every week. I don't think that's that. Every team needs a guy like a Tony Wallace, just someone who's big, strong, fit, can put himself about, happy to do all the dirty stuff and allow the flair players to play. And he's got quite a unique role in that Dumbarton team where he plays out wide for them because he's not necessarily like a winger. He's just somebody like a wide midfielder is how you would describe it. And just a really good, he scored, I think he takes all Dumbarton's penalties, put them away. Good threat at set pieces. And just it seems to be a bit of cliched, and I don't know the guy, never really spoken to anyone that's played alongside him, but the impression he just seems to be a good guy to have around the place. And so it was good to see them. I won't use the word combining because they didn't necessarily combine, but Gallagher was, before the ball went in the back of the net, Gallagher was the second last player to touch the ball for Dumbarton, and Tony Wallace was the final player to touch the ball for Dumbarton.
It's funny because in terms of that first goal, so like Gallagher Lennon like plays it forward, and it actually does feel quite an aimless ball forward, and it's David Wilson kind of turn. He's in the middle. David Wilson in the middle of the park, and he turns round to Lennon, and he kind of does a kind of exasperated, for goodness sake, what have you done that for? And then you're right, like the wind kind of catches it, it comes back off the bar, totally kind of dumbfounds Blair Caswell, and Tony Wallace puts it in. Lennon is involved in the second goal as well.
Yeah, he sets up Michael Ruth.
Yeah, Michael Ruth. And the way Michael Ruth kind of rolls the defender, and what I thought was interesting was like Lennon had a good game. So did Mark McNulty, oddly, even though they were kind of directly against each other. But we spoke about Mark McNulty earlier in the season in terms of you go to Spartans, you potentially kick on. If you do well, then maybe you could maybe get a move to the Championship or League One or whatever, get back into full-time football. But see, in terms of the kind of players that were on show, and certainly the forwards that were on show, Michael Ruth is the one that I would expect to be in full-time football soon.
So good. Such a good player. I really hope that Stennismuir go in for him. I think we'll be quite far down the pecking order in terms of what we can offer him compared to other teams, because I think, having played, I don't know how old he was, 22, 23, having effectively played full-time football since leaving Queen's Park to go to Aberdeen. He spent probably the last 4 or 5 years playing full-time football. But Dumbarton really feels like the club that's completely reinvigorated him and given him the platform to go and kick on again. And if you want to compare him to, you'd probably compare him to a similar story to like Lauren Shankland or Kevin Nisbet, someone that I don't ever think Ruth's attitude was in question to the same extent like Nisbet or Shankland, where you were hearing the stories when they had made their way back to playing for Scotland. There's Nisbet coming out and saying, I'd have like 2 rolls and square sausage every morning before the game. I don't think Ruth's like that, but his quality, he's proven himself too good for this level. And I know he doesn't score a lot of goals, so if you're to look at him, you'd be like, his numbers don't add up. Go and watch him play. Go and see what he can do. See how strong he is. See how well he uses his body. See how fit and enthusiastic he is. See how clever a player he is. Yeah. And just, I think that you said that if he was to play up front with a partner, someone who is a bit more of a fox in the box, I think you'd have we don't tend to see that in Scottish football. We don't really tend to see it in football at all, players with 2 up front. But I think that I would love to see him at Steny next season. I think he would be absolutely brilliant. But I do appreciate that he will have ambitions to play higher up the food chain. And that's great. When guys have a setback and have to drop down to playing in League 2 level, the fact that they can put themselves and work hard and not just say, oh, fuck, this is shite. I'm playing at a level that I don't think I should be playing at. Woe is me. And then you sort of fall off the wagon, for want of a better expression. The fact you say, no, I'll show you how good I am. And if he can fire them up, he can play like that, set up goals like that. The way he rolls the defender and plays that ball in for Finlay Gray, excellent stuff. And just every time I've seen him this season, I think he's a great player, man. I think he's a really, really good player. Best striker for me in that division.
Very, very good. I think in terms of Spartans getting back into it, obviously Ayrton Sonker scored the goal. I'm not entirely sure it should still have been on the park at that point.
Definitely stamped on Ruth. And this is quite interesting because it ties into the point, I was kind of joking about it earlier, but the highlights on the SPFL, which were cut straight from BBC Alba, they have cut out a lot of the more interesting aspects of the game. If you were to watch the highlights on the SPFL YouTube channel, they refer back to things about penalties and red cards that you don't actually see in the highlights. And it's only by having read the match thread on Pie and Bovril, where someone has put clips up from the games, that you can get an idea as to what happened. And Sonker definitely stamps on Ruth. There's no doubt about it. If in these situations, if you want to get out of the way of someone, you can get out of the way of them.
Of course you can.
A lot of the time. But this one, he definitely seemed to want to make contact and stamp on his back. And the worst thing was, it was right in front of the referee. And I think a lot of these times, like, you may want to give the player, the offender, the benefit of the doubt. I think, though, when you think about it, you can get out of the way. If you want to get out of the way of a player, you can get out of the way of them.
I can only presume, based on the fact that that happened right in front of the referee, so he had to have seen it, then he either just didn't want to give it, or he was under the belief that he didn't mean it. And I'm not entirely sure how he could possibly think that he didn't mean it, because although I think it was his right foot, I think his right foot landed in front of the player, but he very much seemed to make a determined effort to get his left foot into his back.
Yeah, I mean, but that was bad. That was bad as well. We'll talk about Cammy Russell, who should have been sent off. He'd already been booked by this point.
And never seen anything like it.
I've seen something like it in the WWE. That's the only time I've seen stuff like that. Basically, he runs into Carlo Pignatello, and it's like he jumps in. He looks at him. He looks at him and then jumps and sort of like slams his arse into him, sends him flying. That's a booking.
Into his chest.
And then there was, so that's bad. But then I think the Spartans, they mentioned about a penalty decision that didn't go their way.
So same two players involved. So Russell went into the box. In my opinion, Pignatello caught him in the ankle. So I thought it was a penalty. I don't think not getting a penalty necessarily balances up. Potentially two players should have been sent off from Spartans.
Yeah.
So, but not. Funnily enough, up until that point, I thought the referee was having a decent game. And just based on this game, as I went back to look, because I thought Spartans were physical. I thought they played the game on the edge for pretty much the full match. And I went to see how maybe if they had like the most amount of bookings or whatever in League Two, and they've got the fewest. So whether this was just like a one-off, or whether they were told maybe to go out and be a wee bit more physical against a decent Dumbarton team, I don't know, but it would appear that this was, judging by the card count, not the norm for Spartans.
There was an interesting thing that Fraser Clark observed, and he said that see in a normal league game, if you're 2-1 down and you've scored and you're looking to get back into it, you would speed the game up. You would try to do things as quickly as possible. But he observed, see when Sonker scores. So Sonker scores 3 minutes into the second half. I mentioned there, I think it's a corner kick that gets cleared out and it gets put back in. And he does this, like, hooks it, this really, like, improvised finish into the net. It's a really, really, really good goal. But the point that Fraser made was that under normal circumstances, you'd be like, right, we're back in the game, get the ball, run into the net, get it and put it in the centre circle. But he was saying that the Spartans players were like to say, no, just calm it down. Just calm it down, let's slow it down and let's sort of just saunter back into it. And even throughout the matches, as it was ebbing towards a Dumbarton victory, Spartans never showed much impetus to really speed things up. And obviously, it's a two-legged affair, so the game isn't going to be won or lost, particularly by a narrow margin. Just in the first game, you've effectively got another 90 minutes tomorrow night to get the better of them. But it's not something, as a fan, it's not something I'd want to see my team do, even although I know, yes, this is effectively only half time. You'd still want to see your team play with a bit of intensity and to really let's try and get some of this to give us an easier job when we go into Friday night.
I think Fraser's right, but then I suppose by the same token, if you know you can get Dumbarton back to your park 2-1 down, you don't necessarily want to go gung-ho, because ultimately Dumbarton have players in those forward positions that can exploit any gaps that you're leaving. So I can kind of understand. So Fraser's right, but I can kind of understand why they've done it. Yeah.
And I think this will be a really, really good game. If it's anything like this one, it'll be a really, really good game at Ainsley Park. If I had to pick one, I really hope it's Dumbarton that go up.
So they are.
I like Dumbarton. I like them. I like their fans in Pine Bovril. I like Fraser Clark. I like Gillian McTaggart. They're all really, really nice people. Anytime I've been to the Rock this season, everyone's generally been very sound. I know that the Dumbarton fans called me a shit Paul Hartley earlier in the season.
That's one of the reasons I want Dumbarton to win.
Every fan base is a share of idiots and losers, and I know that mob that abused me, they're not representative of the wider support. But nevertheless, it's just that I like them. I just like them as a club, and I do think that some of they're not particularly well run off the park. We know that. We know that's been the case for a while. There's a fairly opaque ownership, and we're not sure if the intentions for the site that the Rock's built on are pure and positive and have the club's best interests at heart. But nevertheless, I think they are. There's a lot to like about this team. And on top of that, I've always said this, I like Stevie Farrell. I like the cut of his jib. I know Dumbarton fans don't. But then I can completely understand that. They're the ones who have seen their team like nearly 3 seasons of abject failure.
Getting progressively worse.
But this feels like that felt like a statement win, and you hope for his sake he can follow it up with another win on Friday night.
I see where you're coming from, and you're right. This, considering how some of the maybe all of the big games under Stevie Farrell have panned out, maybe up until the last semi-final for this playoff campaign. Big question marks over them in terms of big games. You're right. So the 1-2-1, a good victory. However, see, watching it, I just got the impression that, I suppose, as you explained and as Fraser mentioned, I get the impression that Spartans maybe have another gear, and I'm not entirely sure Dumbarton do. So I think Spartans will do it.
There was another point he made about the Dumbarton substitutions. Dumbarton only made one change, and it was late on in the game, and this was despite a number of players looking quite leggy and looking a little bit tired. And obviously that pitch at the Rock doesn't help anyone, doesn't do any favours for anyone. And that's something the club really need to look at, as investing in a new and getting a synthetic surface. I know Duncan Ferguson won't like that when he's playing it he's having to play there next season. But just get a good surface down, because Dumbarton could be a better team. I said that when I went to see them against Stirling Albion. Calvin Orsay wanting to run with the ball and take players on, and also like second guess his movements because the ball could catch up in the mud and prevent him from doing a dribble. So come up to the division, sort your fucking selves out. That's my advice.
It's funny because there was points and there was points during the game where you were seeing it from the kind of side of the park. Obviously, to be fair, there was a lot of rain on the pitch, so at times it was like watching a match from inside a kaleidoscope.
It was. It reminded me of that meme of the boy at the party who sits down and goes, "I can't see, I can't see."
And at those points, the pitch didn't look that bad. But there was a point, I think, late, maybe towards the end of the second half, and there was a camera above, behind and above one of the goals, and you could see there was just massive chunks that just did not have any grass on them at all. And obviously, it was raining, and it was just getting heavier and heavier and heavier. Somebody did point out on Pine Bover recently that there has been no games cancelled at that stadium this season or so. That's an improvement.
No, that's right. If you think, particularly last season, the game against Stirling Albion looked like it was never ever going to get played. But that's a fair point. And we thought that when Broomhill moved in, when inexplicably were allowed to ground share with them, we thought that this pitch was going to look like, Michael Carroll, the lotto lout, how he bought a country pile and turned the back garden into a scrapyard. I think a lot of people thought that the pitch was going to look like that, and it's not fantastic. But I mean, if there's no games that have been cancelled, they must be doing something right to an extent. And I say that's to an extent. That's very heavily italicised.
Very much to an extent.
Very much to an extent. But you're fancying Spartans for this one then?
I think so. As I say, I think they can play better.
No, I'm going to go for Dumbarton for this one. But Shaughan, I think we will leave it at that. I think you and I are going to catch up on Sunday.
Sunday, yes.
Sunday, yes. I've got, like I mentioned, a day out in Edinburgh with
Carl Aitchison.
Robert, Chris Aitchison.
Chris Aitchison.
Who did you call him?
Who's Carl Aitchison?
I don't know. I'd like to find out, though. I'd like to find out. Nah, Chris Aitchison's one of the best people of all time, and I prefer it. If you want to make fun of people, don't make it Christie. So, we've got the Hearts Rangers game to look forward to, and then a day in Edinburgh. So we'll be recording after that, and that'll be talking about the finals from all these games, the two on the Friday and the one on the Saturday evening. But nevertheless, if you have enjoyed this podcast and want to listen to more, please do subscribe to the Patreon. There are podcasts that are going up every single day, and there's a really good one that went up with Tony Anderson and friend of the family Chris Finn, talking about Malky Mackay's appointment as the new technical director, I think his position is, at Hibernian Football Club, and just what it means to the club, what it means to them as supporters, and it's very interesting, very nuanced take on it, because obviously it's a lot of noise, both negative and positive, about that move. So it's definitely worth listening to. But Shaughan, we will. I suppose that's a good time to wrap it up.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, so please, if you are going to a game of football this weekend, there's still a full card in the Premiership. There's 3 games in the lower leagues to go to. Enjoy your football, but unlike Benjamin Massing at the 1990 World Cup, enjoy your football, but please do so respectfully. What a tackle. Imagine tackling somebody that hard, your boot comes flying off. Absolutely obscene. But take it
maybe
easy.
His lace was out. Maybe his lace was out.
Maybe that's why he slipped. Maybe that's why he sent Claudio Caniggia flying. Who knows? We'll never ever know. But Shaughan, take care. I'll catch up with you soon.
Bye-bye.
We'll see you later. Bye.